अंग्रेज अपना लगान और न्यूज लॉन्ड्री अपना हफ्ता कभी नहीं छोड़ते. Welcome to another episode of Hafta. We're recording this on 8th of November, Friday. Happy Chhat Puja for those of you who did celebrate Chhat yesterday. We are going to start recording Hafta on Fridays from now on, hopefully, so that we can be a little more not dated, because we usually used to record on Thursday. I'm going to introduce the guests, but before I do that, I have an announcement, which is, as usual, our election coverage is on. Manisha is not here because she's in Jharkhand right now, so is Atul, and they'll be going to Maharashtra. And our election coverage is non-sponsored and ad-free because it is supported by you. So here's the QR code. While we record this, I'm surprised that our election funds have not been topped up. Usually they get topped up before our crew heads out. So we've made them head out. Now their ghar vapsi depends on if the fund gets topped up. Otherwise they can just find employment and stay there. One way ticket का यह budget है sir. तो उनसे email से मंगवा लेना, laptop से वापस मंगवा लेना.
Our reporters and TNM reporters, they are also in the field.
So then all of them can stay there.
Yes. They are. They all are in Maharashtra.
So yes, with great. Chalo, Balatali. So on that note, the QR code is still flashing. You can also click on the link in the show notes below and contribute. Let me introduce the guests in the studio, and we'll have one more guest joining us in a bit. Raman, Kirpal, Editor-in-Chief.
Hello.
And also joining us in the studio is Shahrukh Alam. Welcome, Shahrukh.
Thank you.
Thank you for making the time. Shahrukh has been on Hafta before. Many of you already probably recognize her because of her appearances and writing and various commentary. Shahrukh is a Supreme Court advocate. She has an interest in constitutionality and criminal law and its intersection with political power, identity and class. So we shall discuss the outgoing Chief Justice and maybe the incoming, and at least one or two cases that made headlines the last week. But before we get into the discussion, let's get the headlines. Let's start with Chief Justice Chandrachud going, the new Chief Justice coming in. There was too much of expectation and euphoria when he was sworn in, as if he's going to be the next, person to transform Indian governance, which was a little unrealistic. And now that he's going out, I read a barrage of editorials and articles which now are just going to the other extreme of saying that he was the worst thing that ever happened to humankind. Is it somewhere in the middle?
One thing I've also been struck by is the fact that his retirement is now a news event, right? And each interview and each column that's being written by him is also a news event. It's in itself an event. And these are all meta events that are looping back into themselves. So what he says on one occasion then becomes the subject of yet another interview and yet another discussion. To the point, I think, that...
Was it just pure coincidence that in the last month or two, I've seen or read at least 2 or 3 different pieces by other judges, in fact 2 of them women, either directly calling out Justice Chandrachud in not very polite terms, and in one case not calling out directly but saying that your religious practice is not for performance, it is your own at home. I don't think a judge should be seen to be engaging in all this and saying stuff like that. Is it just coincidence, or was he so unpopular with other judges? I was very surprised because there's been a barrage of pieces.
I think it's also invoked a kind of very visceral reaction, and I'd give him the benefit of the doubt. I'd say that even the reference to communing with the deity, my problem is slightly different. My problem is that it's not a private event anymore because it's become a very but just that in comparison to the Gandhian prayer, it's inward morality making, and as Chief Justice of India, if your morality making, your moral compass is so inward, then where does that leave us? And I'd argue that where it leaves us is that you're not looking at patterns of weaponization of law. You're not looking at patterns of oppression. You're looking inwardly. You're looking at individual cases that come to you. And you're trying to do the best that you can vis-a-vis those individual cases. For instance, he's also talked about bail to Arnab and to Zubair. Even while doing justice to Arnab and to Zubair, there is a pattern of harassment of journalists. How many cases are there against you, for instance?
Yeah.
there's Siddiqui Kappan, there's Prashant Kanodia. I mean, there are any
So
number
many,
of
yeah.
journalists. Could the CJI have identified that pattern and responded to the pattern instead of responding to singular cases that have come before him?
In fact, there is one case that is being heard where
I think my problem is more about disregarding the patterns of abuse and celebrating individual cases. And I mean, he's given some very good judgments. His dissent in Romila Thapar, where in the Bhima Koregaon case, for instance,
right.
where he talks about how investigation itself can become a process of punishment and harassment. That was his dissenting judgment. He's talked about the unfairness of sealed envelopes in investigation processes. He gave a very good judgment in the Media One channel case,
Right.
where he talks about the bogey of national security, how the state invokes. But he's not carried it through to give us comprehensive relief in all these cases.
Just like the electoral bonds.
Just like the electoral
He
bonds.
said they legally reversed it and they had to be made public, but he didn't do it early enough to prevent the use of that.
But that's very true. I mean, the patrons, he did not know. Even the bulldozer patron. I mean, I think this decision is coming very late. And also...
but also about him, he has brought the bar down in some cases. I mean, there are many examples, but look
Such
at
as?
Gyanvyapi,
Okay.
the opening of the Gyanvyapi, which goes against his own judgment in the Babri Masjid case. Hindenburg, Pegasus,
Yeah.
the Maharashtra
Oh yeah, that
elections.
was where, that was again a bit like the Babri Masjid, that yes, what happened was wrong, but now
but
let
now,
it be.
Yeah.
That's
And Gyanvyapi was even more brazen because...
And as if by magic, Shahrukh Alam has been replaced by another superstar, Sreenivasan Jain. Although it is Shahrukh Khan because, you know, Sreenivasan Jain superstar.
और कोई नहीं मिला.
Who has had a lot of travel in the last few weeks. And hopefully we'll have some more. But we will talk about the US election. But Sreenivasan, before I do that, I have two quick announcements for our friends. One is this is the QR code for Newslaundry subscription because we are an ad-free, non-sponsored platform because we depend on you. So pay to keep news free. When the public pays, the public is served. And everyone from, this is something everybody agrees on. People like Elon Musk to the most, you know, liberal, conservative, progressive. Everyone agrees that, oh, media is shit. Media doesn't give you the truth. Corporate media is this, corporate media is that. Of course, everybody has their own reasons for that observation. But that is now universally accepted. Newslaundry has been giving you the solution for over a decade. If you leave it to advertisers of large corporations or governments, that's what you're going to get. So please scan the QR code and pay to keep news free. And secondly, we have our teams out in 2 different states. Manisha, Atul will be traveling to Maharashtra, Jharkhand. They're in Jharkhand right now. So you can make sure they have the resources to report because reporting is not something that you can just do sitting here. You have to go on the ground. It takes time, energy, resources. So please do contribute. This is the QR code. You can scan it. It'll stay on the screen for a while. So meanwhile, you can get your phone while listening to the podcast. And if you're listening to this audio only, you can click in the link that will be provided along with the podcast and contribute and pay to keep news free. On that note, Sreenivasan Jain, I have many specific questions. I have so many tabs open of completely, what's the word I'm looking for, which goes against what you would think? Counterintuitive exit polls of the US election. But you went there, you spent time, you spoke to people at rallies, you spoke to leaders, journalists, Mehendi Hassan. In fact, all Vasu's shows and the reports are outside the paywall. So you can access them now. Thank you, those of you who did contribute. If you still want to contribute, we're flashing the QR code one last time. Please do contribute. But were you surprised? Were you not? Because I've been consuming a lot of US media. And everybody seems surprised. But it's not a very narrow victory. It's a convincing victory.
Yeah, it is. I mean, in the sense, if you look at the vote share difference, it's a 3.5 percentage point difference. So statistically, it's not that wide. But obviously, because he swept everything, he swept all the swing states. In
Yeah.
addition to the red states, he swept all the swing states. It is a significant victory. It's not. It's not as close as the exit poll suggested, but it is within the margin of error
Right.
of any exit poll. 3%, 4% point either side.
And also
But
it's been
let's-
called convincing because of the Senate and the House as well, I guess,
As well.
probably.
So there's no doubt it's a huge win. Now, I think it's fair to say, and no Patrakar is going to come on without doing a little bit of self promotion कि मैंने कहा था मैंने बताया था कि यही होने वाला है. So jokes apart, if you saw our reports, I think what we were finding on the ground.
I also saw in these exit polls, I don't know how accurate these exit polls are, but
Sure.
what they say is that only 4% of those polled said that Gaza is a determinant in their vote. 4% of all that they polled. Now, 4% of the entire population for whom it is a determinant, out of those 4%, I don't know how many actually really went out to vote or not vote. So, this whole thing of, which is a very Twitter thing, that, the support to Gaza was why she lost. If you would go by exit poll data, at least as far as the voting is concerned, it would not have made any difference
So that
because you visited both places.
So when we went to Dearborn in Michigan, which is the ground zero for the Arab American, discontent with Gaza, everyone is going there. Every poll pundit, psephologist, I think journalist goes there to interview. So we didn't use this clip in our story, by the way.
Okay.
So we went to a hairdresser. He's an Iraqi dude. He can barely speak English. He was reading the Quran when we entered. We asked him, who do you want to vote for? He said, Trump. So we did a double take. We said, Bhaiya, aap, We said, why? We thought he would say Gaza. He said, no. I was feeling better under Trump, economy-wise. And I'm suffering now. So we said, okay, Gaza? He says, I'm not really following that. I'm not really keeping an eye on that. So, from that to, many such examples, and the exits are bearing this out, that the economy was a very, very strong factor. And in fact, Abhinandan and Raman, there's a counter view that Biden, the Dems, were on paths to defeat regardless of whether it was Trump or Chump.
Right. They had a very difficult hand to deal with.
There was just anti-incumbency, there was anger, there was a bunch of different things. There was immigration, there was the pullout from Afghanistan, etc. So compounding this overall feeling of unhappiness. And all that Kamala managed to do was...
We have a situation, for the past 1 year where the Gaza is happening and Ukraine is happening. And the US role as it comes out is affecting their domestic economic situation also. Billions of
dollars
have been given to Israel and Ukraine for their support. So here we have a situation of despair. So in this given situation, whether it is Trump, he was earlier in the power and people were not so happy at that particular time.
Okay.
But now even Trump looks like a hope. Okay. So I think it is the situation which made people to vote for Trump, because look at this Gaza thing. 45,000 people died.
Correct.
And what has America done? Look at.
The point is that these characters, whether it's a Trump, a Bolsonaro, or a Modi, they're not really outsiders. They position themselves as outsiders. They position themselves as disruptors. But Trump is a billionaire real estate tycoon, right? He's not
being backed by Elon Musk. Who says we are the outside?
Yeah. It's a ridiculous argument, right? And when he was president for 4 years, so he's certainly not an outsider anymore. This time he's not running as but he positioned himself as an outsider. He's still talking of deep state and draining the swamp. When he was president, he brought the swamp with him. The entire government was infiltrated with special interests, including his own. There was a Trump hotel across the White House, as you guys know.
Yeah.
And world leaders were, sort of
told that aapki sari entourage wahan
rahegi. He's not that entertaining, by the way. Actually, sit through one of his rallies, he rambles. What he calls...
It's called the weave.
He does the weave.
It's the weave. It goes there and that comes around here.
So he said, So, like, he said another thing that he said that when I came, immigration, like after I left, immigration blew up, just like Elon's rocket blew up. So this is the weave. So after that, we were treated to a 4-minute rambling monologue on how the rocket, it was a beautiful rocket, but it blew up. We were all watching. And then everyone was just, completely stunned. And then something, and these Venezuelan gangs, they're very bad.
बस मुफ्त में इतना ही मिलेगा. For the full uncut podcast, subscribe to Newslaundry and pay to keep news free. The best way to listen to the Hafta and indeed all our podcasts is through the Newslaundry app. You can download the app by clicking on the links given in the show notes. So do download our app and get the best podcast experience. And also pay for news and support a new news media ecosystem that Newslaundry is trying to encourage, where we are accountable to you because we run on contributions that you make. We don't take government ads, we don't take corporations ads, so that news serves the public, because when the public pays, the public is served. Subscribe to Newslaundry, click on the link in the show notes below and proudly say, I pay to keep news free.